just to let you know that we're not giving you 4 weeks of sessions and saying good luck with all that. We have lots of way to help you, so feel free to reach out to us directly. We'll share a form link before the end of the session. And then also your customer success manager who invited you here, like obviously we can work with them to help you get connected with any of the things you see on the screen. And I guess the last side note is we do publish these PowerPoint decks, presentations to the Modern Work Superheroes community, so you'll have all of the content as well. All right, so now into the hot topics. As I mentioned, in November of 2021, we released Viva Connections to the world. It was generally available, so production release, and it had this experience. And so the experience was very SharePoint content focused. So if you can see, I know it's a little bit small, but it's basically you have your SharePoint content is kind of dominating, I would say about 2/3 to 3/4 of the left side of the page. And so our dashboard cards that we talked about last week, they occupy maybe 25% on the right side, lower right. So not a tremendous amount of space for the dashboard cards. And so in order to have this experience with Viva Connections, you had quite a few deployment steps. So it was because it's SharePoint site focused, it was heavily tied to having a certain state of SharePoint readiness. So you had to have a modern SharePoint intranet on SharePoint Online. So we didn't support any sort of hybrid or on-prem scenarios. You had to have a home site, which is a specific type of site in SharePoint. You had to enable a SharePoint app bar. You had to create the dashboard. You had to worry about, your content for the news feed. So our news feed is maybe a reminder from last week that comes from our SharePoint news. It comes from Viva Engage or Yammer. And then it also comes from Stream Video if you're using that in your organizations. And so then after that, it was a standard Teams task of add the app in Teams, configure it for mobile, and then launch with your end users. But obviously you can kind of see steps 1, 2, 3, and 5 could be very time intensive if you didn't already have a modern SharePoint intranet on SharePoint Online. So we had feedback from our customers. We also had feedback from our field. So our sellers, our engineers, our architects, our customer success managers saying, this takes too long, it's too difficult. So this is what we released in March. And so you'll kind of see a complete reversal of the experience. So the star of this new desktop experience that we released in March are the dashboard cards. The dashboard cards are the shining stars of this experience. You can see at the top, we've also added apps to the different Viva apps. So you can see Engage, Viva Sales, Viva Learning, Amplify. It will say Amplify is not out yet. So somebody in marketing got a little happy with their screen mock-ups here. Amplify is expected later this year in the next quarter. And then we have insights and goals and topics and pulse. So just a tremendous amount of access to the Viva apps all in one place. So that was one of the pieces of feedback we got. But as you can see, the dashboard cards are kind of the star, and on the right we still have our feed, but instead of being like this rich customized SharePoint page, you're getting a prioritized feed based on an algorithm that's giving you news from SharePoint, Viva Engage, and Stream Video. So it's a little bit different. It's much more focused on apps and a little bit less focused on content. And then at the bottom, we have our global navigation shows up in the lower left, and then we have access to our frequent sites and followed sites. If you've ever gone to like the SharePoint homepage in Microsoft 365, you'll see your frequent sites and followed sites there as well. So it's bringing some of that into Viva Connections. So once again, these are very different experiences. One's very customizable, SharePoint content focused. The other one is very app focused. So it's like dashboard cards and Viva apps are kind of the objective with our new desktop experience released in May. And because of that, because there's a much smaller focus on SharePoint content, you'll notice our deployment steps are quite a bit smaller. So you need to add the app in Teams, app settings, owners and members, customize your dashboard. So you need to customize your dashboard for either scenario and then launch with end users. But it's significantly smaller effort and journey to get Viva Connections up and running. And so to that end, we're going to answer the question, why did we add a new experience? And it really is just, there's a longer documentation on our tech community site, but I kind of put it in one slide with the top three. One of the challenges we had is that with the original experience, I'm actually going to go back to this slide, but with the original experience, you'll see on the right, we see dashboard cards on the mobile device, but we see the SharePoint site on the desktop. So with our original experience, desktop and mobile were very different experiences. And so that was difficult for some of our customers because they're wanting to train their employees on how to use it. And people are asking, well, why is it so different when I use it on my phone versus on my laptop? So that was point number one of feedback. The second point, if you'll see in the upper right, and this is probably the largest one, is that for the original experience, if you did not have a modern SharePoint online intranet, you had a lot of work to do to get up and running. And so that could mean months. We actually had a customer that I talked to in August of 2021, September 2021, and then they just launched in March. So they literally had an 18-month time frame from initial conversations with us to deployment of their Viva Connections experience because they weren't on SharePoint at all. So they actually had to build an intranet and do a lot of work. They have great success with it, but not every customer wants to wait 18 months. And so to that end, the last point is the Viva app. So Viva is a suite. So if you're not familiar, Viva is a suite of different apps: Viva Learning, Viva Insights, Viva Engage, Viva Sales, et cetera. You can see those icons in the top. So our suite customers were irritated because if they had, like, say, 6 apps, they're having to pin 6 apps to the left rail and Teams. And we all know that real estate is always a difficult thing to navigate within a company because there's only so much space. And surprise, you have apps in your organization that are not Viva. So Viva Connections, with a new experience, you can just pin Viva Connections, and then employees have a way to get to all of the different Viva apps from one place. So whether you purchase Suite or not, Viva Insights, Viva Learning, Viva Engage all have what we call seated experiences, which are the kind that have no additional cost. So for any organization, it may be hugely beneficial, to not have to deal with that, pinning 4 apps to the left rail, for example, by using the new experience. So this was kind of the why. We were asked that question quite a bit initially as customers saw this release. We're asking why. So this is the why. Hopefully it makes sense. And so we're going to get into things to think about. So as you move forward in your journey to Viva Connections, it'll be important to make a decision as to which experience is right for your organization. So we have no plans to eliminate the original experience, so you can choose from either as you're planning right now. And so these are really just some things to think about. So just as a reminder, this is what we had to begin with, and this is our new experience. So you're really choosing between these 2 experiences. Obviously, yours will look different based upon your content and your if you have the SharePoint intranet, et cetera. So these are really the top 5 things that I keep in mind when I'm talking to customers. So one, kind of the obvious, do you have an intranet on SharePoint Online? Is it modern? And so if the answer is no, that's going to take you down the path of new one, especially if you're wanting to get up and running quickly. Second, do my business stakeholders. So here I'm thinking about communication stakeholders, the people that might run your intranet, kind of make those decisions about the employee experience and what they're seeing, the user experience for this app. Customers, some of them they like having a high level of control over what it visually looks like. And so with a new experience, you don't have a lot of control. You can add a background image for the banner, but otherwise you can order your dashboard cards on the page, but you don't have any ability to control much theming or page layout other than that. And so that can be a decision-making factor as well. Some of our customers have really beautiful SharePoint online intranets. They've spent a lot of time and money making them that way. And so for the time being, at least, they're very much set on the original experience because they've invested in it and their employees are getting value out of that. The third question to ask would be, do you have other Viva apps in use now, or do you plan to? So if you're going to start using Viva Insights, Viva Learning, Viva Goals, any of our Viva Suite apps, Viva Engage, it's helpful to take that into consideration because at some point that makes it easier to use Viva Connections as a launching point for those apps. So you don't have to pin multiple apps on the left rail in Teams. Our fourth point is if you're going to have dashboard cards, what we call high impact or engaging dashboard cards. So something more than just like a link to a website. We know that success with Viva Connections, especially for the new experience, means you need to have high impact dashboard cards. And so if you only have a few of those, your original experience might be better if you have like a really nice SharePoint online intranet, as opposed to if you've got 15 different applications that you are integrating via dashboard cards, like maybe the new experience is the right way to go. And we'll talk through some scenarios. The goal here is we're going to walk through 4 customer scenarios and kind of work through like the recommendation there. And then the last question to ask is if your employees are going to use both desktop and mobile. And the reason for this is that when you have the original experience, they're very different experiences. So if I'm on desktop, I see a SharePoint intranet. And if I'm on mobile, I see that very simple, I have a tab for dashboard cards, a tab for newsfeed, and a tab for my resources. And my dashboard cards are that default tab. And so it's not going to be the same if I use the original experience. For some customers, that's completely fine. For others, they want it to be more similar. So they might lean towards the new experience. I will tell you that in general, a lot of this is consulting answer of it depends. But this is really meant to give you some general guidance to get you thinking about the right things as you make that decision. And Hans, I realized after the fact, I should have had some slide animation so that I didn't have the recommendation. We could have people vote on what they thought the right answer was. So I'll do that next time. So our customer scenario 1 is that our customer has a SharePoint Online Modern Intranet. They don't have any other Viva apps in use, so nothing at the moment. They have fewer than 5 dashboard cards at launch, and they're mostly information workers that are using desktops. So for this customer, we're thinking original experience. If they had the new experience, they wouldn't have any Viva apps at the top. They wouldn't have many dashboard cards. And so it would be a very empty page. And so because this customer is mainly focused on their SharePoint Online intranet content, we think the original experience would be best for them. Try to get anything in the chat. All right. Everybody's quiet today. It's okay. I actually like the fact that at least Hans, you're staying on camera, so I appreciate that, because I will say, and I'm sure you've done this, but when you're presenting, I presented before to 100 people over the phone with 0 interaction for an hour. And so you have no idea, you're just talking into the black box. Anyway, I'll get back to the content. But anyway, I appreciate you staying on camera with me.
Sure thing.
But please ask questions in the chat. So next is our customer scenario 2. So our customer has a very customized SharePoint online intranet. The customer is also using Viva Insights. They do have a small number of dashboard cards, and employees use both desktop and mobile. So this one gets into customer preference, and it gets a little bit, and it came on camera, awesome. So a little bit less alone. So this is the consulting answer of it depends. So in deciding which way, if I were the customer, deciding which way I want to go is, as I mentioned, it's going to be different between desktop and mobile. So do I want to explain to my employees and provide training on the fact that it looks one way on desktop or laptop and a different way on their mobile device? Maybe that's fine. Maybe it's not. With the second one, with a new experience, the new experience might be a little bit light because they're just going to have a link to Viva Insights and a small number of cards and then a small space for newsfeed. So if they went with a new experience, it might look a little light. And then the last point is that when we talk about the new desktop experience, it's been referred to as Viva Home, but I've since been informed that it's not called Viva Home. But you may have heard it called Viva Home in some of our previous articles. But the new desktop experience is kind of the future direction of Viva Connections. So it's likely that many customers that go with the original experience today, maybe 2 years from now, they're switching to the new one. And so that means that going with the original one today, you're creating this employee behavior, for some people at least, right? They're going to experience their intranet in Teams. And so if your organization decides to change 18 months down the road, then you just kind of have to switch that behavior back to them looking at their intranet in the web browser. So None of this is bad. We change technology experiences all the time, but we need to be nice to our employees and not change them too often and too drastically. So it's, once again, it's really just things to keep in mind as you're making this decision. All right, we will get on to customer scenario number 3. So this customer also has a SharePoint Online Modern Intranet. They're using both Viva Insights and Viva Learning. They have 10 dashboard cards, and they're using both desktop and mobile. So for them, we're actually going to recommend the new experience because they have we're assuming they have highly engaging dashboard cards. They're using 2 other Viva apps. And then also in this customer's case, the desire is to have that feature parity and experience parity between mobile and desktop or laptop. And so all of this means that they won't have to change behaviors down the road, and they're going to have a rich experience. They can leave their intranet use in the browser, and everybody's happy. So that's kind of the goal here for the customer. And then our last scenario, and we're not even at 10:30 my time, so like I am talking too fast, and you're right, Hans, it'll be a short session today. So you don't have to tell your managers that the session ended early. You can like go have a nice coffee or tea or something when we're done. So for customer scenario number 4, the customer has no SharePoint Online Intranet, but they use Viva Engage. They've actually purchased the Viva Suite. So they've purchased the premium features of Viva, and they're enabling those apps. They have 6 dashboard cards, and they also have a mix of desktop and mobile users. So our recommendation here is new experience. The predominant reason for that is actually the second bullet point, which is they're able to deploy Viva connections fairly quickly instead of having to build a SharePoint Online Intranet before doing that. This is especially important for our suite customers that aren't SharePoint customers today. They've purchased something, they want to use the something that they purchased, and so they don't want this like 6-month SharePoint project delaying adoption of the entire Viva suite. So that's really the biggest decision-making factor there. Between the apps in the Viva suite, the 6 dashboard cards, and Viva Engage for their newsfeed, like they're going to have a rich experience. And all of this, and Hans, I don't know if you want to add commentary here, but like I will just say, I know that's going to be a lot faster time to deployment and use than it would be in like the original experience.
Absolutely, it's going to be it's like you can remove a whole project from the whole deployment process.
Yeah, it basically, the new experience, if we wanted to like shorten it to a simple statement, it decouples the deployment of Viva connections from your intranet. So if you want to couple it together, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the original experience. Lots of customers love it. So like this is not a good, bad, better, worse. Like this is all what's right for your organization. But for customers that are not ready with their SharePoint intranet and want to do things with dashboard cards, they want to have this dashboard for their employees. And if you remember, we talked about audiences, so you can actually make these experiences very custom to an employee's role in the organization, their group that they work in, their geographic location, whatever those things are. Like you can deliver this great experience without having the headaches of sorting out your SharePoint intranet stuff before that's possible. So this is a key thing, is just really addressing our suite customers, and then also addressing our customers that don't have the SharePoint prerequisites. We didn't want that to be a blocker to using Viva.